Hello, fourth grade. We're finishing up my side of the mountain, and I'm on the bottom of page 168. Matt had to return to school, and Bando stayed on to help burn another tree for the guest house. We chopped off the blackened wood and made one bed and started the second before he had to return to his teaching. I wasn't alone long. Mr. Jacket found me. I was out on the raft trying to catch an enormous snapping turtle. It would take my line, but when I got its head above water, it would eye me with those cold, ancient eyes and let go. Frightful was nearby. I was making a noose to throw over the turtle's head the next time it surfaced, when Frightful lit on my shoulder with a thud and a hard grip. She was drawn up and tense, which in her language said, people. So I wasn't surprised to hear a voice call from across the stream. "Hi, Mr. Daniel Boone. What are you doing?" There stood Mr. Jacket. "I am trying to get this whale of a snapper," I said, in such an ordinary voice that it was dull. I went on with the noose making, and he called to me, "Hit it with a club." I still couldn't catch the old tiger, so I rafted ashore and got Mr. Jacket. About an hour later, we had the turtle, had it cleaned, and I knew that Mr. Jacket was Tom Seidler. "Come on up to the house," I said, and he came on up to the house, and it was just like after school on 3rd Avenue. He wanted to see everything, of course, and he did think it unusual. But he got over it in a hurry and settled down to helping me prepare the meal for turtle soup. He dug the onions for it while I got it boiling in a tin can. Turtle is as tough as a rock, and it had to be boiled for hours before it gets tender. We flavored the soup with hickory salt and cut a lot of Solomon's seal tubers into it. Tom said it was too thin, and I thickened it with mashed up nuts. I had run out of acorn flour. I tried some orris root in it. Pretty fair. "Want to stay and eat it and spend the night?" I asked him. Somewhere along the way, he said sure, but added that he had better go home and tell his mother. It took him about 2 hours to get back, and the turtle was still tough, so we went out to the meadow to fly Frightful. She caught her own meal, we tied her to the perch, and climbed into the gorge until almost dark. We ate turtle soup. Tom slept in the guest tree. I lay awake wondering what had happened. Everything seemed so everyday. I liked Tom, and he liked me, and he came up often, almost every weekend. He told me about his bowling team and some of his friends, and I began to feel I knew a lot of people in the town below the mountain. This made my wilderness small. When Tom left one weekend, I wrote this down. Tom said that he and Reed went into an empty house, and when they heard the real estate man come in, they slid down the laundry chute to the basement and crawled out the basement window. He said a water main broke and flooded the school grounds, and all the kids took off their shoes and played baseball in it. I drew a line through all this, and then I wrote, "I haven't seen the Baron Weasel. I think he has deserted his den by the boulder. A catbird is nesting nearby. Apparently, it has learned that Frightful is tied some of the time because it comes right up to the fireplace for scraps when the leash is snapped." I drew a line through this too and filled up the rest of the piece of bark with a drawing of Frightful. I went to the library the next day and took out 4 books. Aaron came back. He came right to the hemlock forest and called. I didn't ask him how he knew I was there. He stayed a week, mostly puttering around with the willow whistles. He never asked what I was doing on the mountain. It was as if he already knew, as if he had talked to someone or read something, and there was nothing more to question. I had the feeling that I was an old story somewhere beyond the foot of the mountain. I didn't care. Bando got a car, and he came up more often. He never mentioned any more newspaper stories, and I never asked him. I just said to him one day, "I seem to have an address now." He said, "Yes, you do." I said, "Is it Broadway and 42nd Street?" He said, "Almost." His eyes knitted, and he looked at me sadly. "It's all right, Bando. Maybe you'd better bring me a shirt and some blue jeans when you come next time. I was thinking, if they haven't sold that house in town, maybe Tom and I could slide down the laundry chute." Bando slowly turned a willow whistle over in his hands. He didn't play it. "In which the city comes to me." The warblers arrived, The trees turned summer green, and June burst over the mountain. It smelled good, tasted good, and was gentle to the eyes. I was stretched out on the big rock in the meadow one morning. Frightful was jabbing at some insect in the grass below me, when suddenly a flash bulb exploded and a man appeared. "Wild boy," he said, and took another picture. "What are you doing? Eating nuts?" I sat up. My heart was heavy. It was so heavy that I posed for him, holding Frightful on my fist. I refused to take him to my tree, however, and he finally left. 2 other photographers came and a reporter. I talked a little. When they left, I rolled over on my stomach and wondered if I could get in touch with the Department of Interior and find out more about the public lands in the West. My next thought was the baseball game in the flooded schoolyard. 4 days passed, and I talked to many reporters and photographers. At noon, on the 5th day, a voice called from the glen. "I know you're there." "Dad!" I shouted, and once again burst down the mountainside to see my father. As I ran toward him, I heard sounds that stopped me. The sound of branches and twigs breaking, of the flowers being crushed. Hordes were coming. For a long moment, I stood wondering whether to meet Dad or run forever. I was self-sufficient. I could travel the world over, never needing a penny, never asking anything of anyone. I could cross to Asia in a canoe via the Bering Strait. I could raft to an island. I could go around the world on the fruits of the land. I started to run. I got as far as the gorge and turned back. I wanted to see Dad. I walked down the mountain to greet him and to face the people he had brought from the city to photograph me, interview me, and bring me home. I walked slowly, knowing that it was all over. I could hear the voices of the other people. They filled my silent mountain. And then I jumped in the air and laughed for joy. I recognized my 4-year-old brother's pleasure song. The family. Dad had brought the family. Every one of them. I ran, twisting and turning through the trees like a Cooper hawk, and occasionally riding a free 50 feet downhill on an aspen sapling. "Dad! Mom!" I shouted as I came upon them along the stream bed, carefully picking their way through raspberry bushes. Dad gave me a resounding slap, and Mother hugged me until she cried. John jumped on me. Jim threw me into the rushes. Mary sat on me. Alice put leaves in my hair. Hank pulled Jim off. Joan pulled me to my feet, and Jake bit my ankle. That cute little baby sister toddled away from me and cried. "Wow, all of New York," I said. "This is a great day for the Catterskills." I led them proudly up the mountain, thinking about dinner and what I had that would go around. I knew how Mother felt when we brought in friends for dinner. As we approached the hemlock grove, I noticed that Dad was carrying a pack. He explained it as food for the first few days, or until I could teach John, Jim, Hank, and Jake how to live off the land. I winked at him. "But Dad, a Gribbly is not for the land." "What do you mean?" he shouted. "The Gribblies have had land for 3 generations. We pioneer. We open the land." He was almost singing. "And then we go to sea," I said. "Things have changed. Child labor laws. You can't take children to sea." I should have glowed over such a confession from Dad had I not been making furious plans as we climbed. Food, beds, chores. Dad, however, had since Christmas to outplan me. He strung up hammocks for everyone all through the forest, and you never heard a happier bunch of kids. The singing and shouting and giggling sent the birds and wildlife deeper into the shadows. Even little Nana had a hammock, and though she was only a toddler, she cooed and giggled all by herself as she rocked between 2 aspen near the meadow. We ate Mother's fried chicken. Chicken is good. It tastes like chicken. I shall never forget that evening, and I shall never forget what Dad said. "Son, I told your mother where you were." And she said, "Well, if he doesn't want to come home, then we will bring home to him. And that's why we're all here." I was stunned. I was beginning to realize that this was not an overnight camping trip, but a permanent arrangement. Mother saw my expression and said, When you are of age, you can go wherever you please. Until then, I still have to take care of you, according to all the law I can find. She put her arm around me, and we rocked ever so slightly. Besides, I am not a Gribbly. I am a Stewart, and the Stewarts loved the land. She looked at the mountain and the meadow and the gorge, and I felt her squeeze into the earth and take root. The next day, I took John, Jim, and Hank out to the mountain meadows with Frightful to see if we could not round up enough food to feed this city of people. We did pretty well. When we came back, there was Dad with 4x4s erected at the edge of my meadow and a pile of wood that would have covered a barn. Gosh, Dad, I cried, what on earth are you doing? We're going to have a house, he said. I was stunned and hurt. A house? You'll spoil everything, I protested. Can't we all live in the trees and hammocks? No. Your mother said she was going to give you a decent home, and in her way of looking at it, that means a roof and doors. She got awfully mad at those newspaper stories, inferring that she had not done her duty. But she did. I was almost at the point of tears. She's a swell mother. What other boy has a mother who would let him do what I did? I know, but a woman lives among her neighbors. Your mother took all those editorials personally, as if they were Mr. Brackett and Mrs. O'Brien speaking. The nation became her neighbors, and no one, not even, he hesitated, a catbird meowed, not even that catbird is going to think that she neglected you. I was about to protest in a loud, strong voice when Mother's arm slipped around my shoulder. And that's how it is until you are 18, Sam, she said, and that ended it. So Sam didn't go back to the city, but the city came to him. Make sure you go to Google Classroom and answer some questions now that we've finished the story. And tomorrow, we'll start our new book, Number of the Stars. See you soon.